He's all doing. Whoa, lovely sunshine came out of nowhere. Eh, I was up all night last night. I just couldn't sleep. I was just like so out of it. I'm half awake now. But I only work a half day on Monday, so it's not too bad. But I was having these crazy nightmares. Having these really intense nightmares would drive me nuts. Kept waking me up, but and mad dreams. And one of the things I want to talk about in this video today is how every single person I know that's had a double needlecraft has had a personality change. I am not being judgmental. I am not being paranoid. They've all changed. Now, they haven't had a personality crisis or anything like that. Like remember that New York doll song, Personality Crisis? Yeah. David Johansen and Johnny Thunders. No, it's not like that. Not like the New York doll song. It's how it described was and I want you to, if you notice this yourselves, the edge has been taken off their personality. They've all gone very kind of into themselves. If they were up for the crack and lots of fun, they're not like that now. They're like, if you saw them in the morning when you go, like, how are you, Tomas? Like, hey, like that kind of thing, Now it's like, morning, all this kind of thing. There's the same kind of friendliness or spark of the zest for life has gone out of them. After the second one now, I've noticed, because I know someone had one and then wised up after reading about all the people who died who'd been vaccinated and didn't get the second, and they're fine. It's the second one, this number two. That's number two that does it. It's like in the Prisoner TV show. Who are you? I am number two. Who is number one? It's like number two is doing in that TV show. Well, we're living in a village now. Aren't we all living in the village now? Aren't we all Patrick McGoon? Those of us who are like in the tribe, aren't we all Patrick McGoon in the village now? And so I've noticed these personality changes, and they haven't become nasty. They haven't become manic. Like I said, the personality edge of the individual has been tapered. They've lost that kind of like little sense of vitality that made them who they were. That little kind of accent, that little serif of their psychic integration that would make you. If someone was to ask about this person, the first thing that popped in their head, oh, he's like this, oh, or she's like that. Well, they've lost that. They've been kind of nullified. It's the strangest thing, and I'm not imagining this. Now, this video for this channel will be a little bit esoteric today, but let's go there, because did any of us ever think we'd end up like this? So like everything's to play for now. I've now experienced absolute and conclusive proof that this thing, or something similar to what they call the Mandela effect, is real, and it's because of that Moonraker movie and the character Jaws, and the girl smiling, his girlfriend smiling. I can remember when she smiled in that film in the cinema, in the Savoy Cinema in Dublin. It distinctly revealed her braces. And that was the joke, that was the kismet, that was the connection, the serendipity between the two. That was what made them click, that Jaws saw her braces. And he smiled. And that was. Otherwise, her character within the plot would not have been resolved in any kind of meaningful way, other than she was kind of like a geeky looking girl with like big boobs, right? Other than that, it was her smile with the braces that's what got the joke. And I can remember it clear as anything. And then I can remember watching on television when it was on TV years later, and that same scene came up. Well, now in every copy, going right back to the VHS copies, you can find them, pull them out. She has no braces. It is a beyond fucked up. She has no braces. Now, you could say, oh, this look, all the other ones, every last other one regarding the what they call the Mandela effect could easily be put down to false memory syndrome, screen memory syndrome, whatever they call it, where you had a kind of an idea, like when you misremember lyrics, or you mishear lyrics from songs, you know, like Message in a Bottle by the Police. A year has passed since I broke my nose, uh, it happens, but it's not something. This was fundamental to the film. This is a central pivotal scene that I remember seeing in that film, where she smiles and has braces, Jaws' girlfriend, and everyone remembers that. It's all gone now. Right back, you go back to if you go back to your parents' house and find this the 1982 VHS cassette of it that you recorded off the TV, and you'll find she has no braces. So some people are trying to say, well, they're re-editing history. I mean, you can't go back and re-edit a 1985 video that's in your parents' house, No, we've slipped into a different timeline. I'm convinced of it. The Jaws braces thing has absolutely convinced me now that something like the Mandela effect has happened. And I believe it's happened since 9/11. That we've been, and this is not out there stuff, many theoretical physicists and everybody all says that there's all these scientific people tell us that there are multiple universes all running in parallel, and there might be subtle differences between one and the other. Well, and that's what synchronicities and deja vus and all this stuff is. The stuff that Anthony Peake writes about, the daemon, that we get glimpses of other realities or future events through these kind of experiences. Now, these were always very individual things. They were always a very, very personal and individual thing. Now we're getting them on a mass level. I guarantee you that most people watching this video will say, I remember Moonraker, or she had braces. She had to have braces. She did. But you won't find them now. You won't find them. Because we've been switched into a timeline, a different reality, where that scene was not written into this version of the movie. Now, this is not a sinister thing. It's like synchronicity. It's a very powerful thing because it shows us. It's a little message from the universe saying that you can alter reality. And so that's why, just want to explain an awful lot of things like, literally when you're showing people, look, there was nearly 70,000 people crammed into Wembley yesterday watching the Euro finals between England and Italy, going nuts and grabbing onto each other, right? And yet we still have social distancing here. And they go, hmm, 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 hmm. And you can't reach them. Why? Because you're in a different reality. I do believe of us, I really, truly, and sincerely now believe that those of us who are in the tribes and who have moved away from the needlecraft and the Rona hysteria, although you find that we were always like this from the start, there's been very few people that have been on the mainstream side and then switched to our side, almost none. We were there from those of us who were like those misfits were like this from the start of the whole thing. We knew something was dodgy was going on. We're probably in a different reality, and there's two culprits at work here. 9/11. 9/11 seems to be very powerful in effect to change reality because you had billions of people all watching the television at the same time, especially when a second plane hit. Two again. Oh, not interesting. I never thought about that. Oh, that's really interesting. There was two planes hit the towers, two jabs for your needlecraft, and it was after the second plane hit the tower that the whole complex collapsed. Not the first, the second, after the second plane. And now you have people getting one needlecraft, they're okay. Second was just the needlecraft. Second needlecraft, and the whole they collapse there, they fall down. These are the kind of things you have to pay attention to. This is why poets are so important. Poetry is so important. Poets can meander around reality in that way, and many writers too. But it was that, I think. Now, I've heard people say it could be CERN, but I honestly don't know enough about CERN to actually say CERN could be doing this. I think it sounds kind of sexy and, plausible, but I'm not going to sit here and say it's CERN because I just don't know enough about CERN, but I do know enough about the psychic shocks of 9/11 that it did blast open a Stargate and it did change consciousness and it changed people. And maybe that's what's going on now. Maybe that's why anything prior to 9/11, and it's funny if you look at all the Mandela effecty things, they're all prior 9/11. Like the ones, the Berenstein Bears, and all the ones, the famous ones. You know, R2D2 in his leg or whatever. They're all pre 9/11. 9/11 switched, split reality in two, and some of us are on the other side of it. And we're in a different time frame, or perhaps we're in the old time frame, and are through all the other ones over. Who knows if this whole needlecraft thing is a kind of an attempt to correct reality timelines by the establishment? I mean, I think everything's for play here. Like you could say that, okay, Thomas, this is way out there. So fucking what? I mean, did you think you'd be like this now 2 years ago, 3 years ago, living in the world that we're living in today? It's all to play for, as far as I'm concerned. Did you actually think you'd be saying to your husband or your brother or your mother or your friend, saying, "Look, it's obvious that all the same people are telling you to mask up or not masking up and not social distancing. So obviously, if they know it's bollocks, you know it's bollocks." Did you actually think you'd have to explain this to your family members and go, "Hmm, hmm, 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 hmm"? Oh well. Did you actually think that they would reach that point where something that was blatant common sense could not be reached into people you cared about or know or close to, and probably would have? Did you actually foresee a day where people that you knew, that I know, who are vehemently anti-vaxxers, who were the first ones to roll up their arms for this thing and tell everyone else to do it, or else? So don't tell me it's far out there. Now, there are other aspects here that could be. Right from the beginning, I was saying, is this a cover story for an asteroid or something? One thing I know about this is the cover story for something. And you can say, okay, the Great Reset and all that stuff and the changing of the banking system. Yeah, that's not enough. What they're doing is much worse. It's much bigger than that. It's a much bigger deal than that. It's bigger than that. There's something else, and my thing has always been that. But there is another one, an Earth, the Earth flipping over, the Earth turning at the 90 degrees, and this has happened, and this usually happens following a regular solar cycle of the sun, and the Earth turns 90 degrees. Right now, what that means is, if it happens very slowly, it's not too bad. If it happens very quickly, you get a sloshing effect, where the oceans start bouncing around and creating tsunamis. Now, the good news is Ireland is going to end up at the equator, and so is Britain. We're going to be equatorial regions. We're not going into the snow or anything. We're going to end up in the equatorial regions, right on the equator. Actually, in fact, the equator will run probably right, very just south of Ireland, and we rotate around the world that way. And if that happens slowly, it wouldn't be so bad. I might be able to grow bananas or something like that. But if it happened very quickly, you'd have a sloshing effect. This is the man that runs the channel Suspicious Observers. There's some very good videos about this. And the sloshing effect could, if it's quickly, create tsunamis. Now, a big one's from the Atlantic. Now, I basically, where I live, I'm surrounded by mountains and I'm on a hill. So if there was something like that, I'd probably have a pretty good chance. They'd have to come over mountains that like 2 or 3 thousand. Well, there's actually just valleys in them, but I think the valleys are still 1,500 feet high. So you'd have to have sea levels at that level. No, feasible, but if they hit the mountain, it would take the shock out of it. And I'm on a hill way above a floodplain anyway. So, and there's this major drainage around the area from the River Moy going back into the Atlantic. So I'd probably even survive that. Hopefully, yeah, I would. I probably would, yeah. But that's one thing, right? There was a reality change, a supernatural psychic change, and maybe could having air change. But whatever it is, I don't know. But I just know that we're living in strange. You know, we living that it's getting stranger by the day. You know, to see people that I know who'd be like up for the crack and a bit of laugh, and they got you know, and even before the second shot, they were still like that, and then they got they got to the second needlecraft, and they're like, they're like that, and then you say to them, then they say, oh well, I got my second one because I wanted to go visit my brother. He lives in England, and the only way to get there is to fly. And then the government says he still can't fly, he'll still get it. And then I'm saying, is that they don't go, you mean I got needle crafted for nothing? They go, hmm, hmm, hmm. You see, those of us who, I was talking to a lady in England years ago. She's an older lady. She's probably well in her 70s now. And she said to me when 9/11 happened, I was watching on TV with my daughter, and I thought it was the end of the world. Well, I think she was probably right. It probably was the end of the world. If you look at the alternative scene up until the the Rona, the catalyst for all of us was 9/11. Now I was awake well before that, and when 9/11 happened, I immediately my alarm bells were going off, and also I didn't see it live that day, and that was I think that was some powerful thing that happened to me. I was down in the basement of an office and I was working on paper records, and my PC wasn't hooked up, so I didn't have any kind of internet because I just started the job. But I was down in the basement working through paper files, old-fashioned filing, and it all happened. And I literally went into this basement of this office building in Dublin at like 9 a.m., right? And then I went upstairs to the cafeteria to get a sandwich or something. And then someone said something's happened, terrible happened in New York. And then I went back down again, plane crash. And then when I came up, the world was changed. But yet I had not experienced any of it live. And I'll always remember that. That I was, people around Dublin were like this. And it was a beautiful sunny day in September, sunny evening. And it was like I was unaffected because I did not see it on the TV. And therefore, either I maintained myself in this reality or the old reality. And I think that's what a lot of us in this wake up community are. I think a lot of us are in the old reality. And the new world is or else the new world is drifting away. I think it's both too. Because I'm telling you, think of all the people that are not around in your life that are not around anymore. And what happened to them? Where'd they go? They vanished. People lived in, where'd they go? They vanished. And there's a huge supply chain issue in the world at the moment, particularly regarding things like building supplies. You cannot, for love nor money, get building supplies. Not just wood, timber, lumber. There's a huge shortage of cement. There's a huge shortage of concrete. There's a huge shortage of all that kind of stuff. So basically, you can't build anything because it's making building things extremely expensive. And again, it seems very on purpose. It's almost like if you were to objectively sit back and look at the establishment and you say, well, they're not building, they're not doing anything anymore. They've stopped building power stations other than the odd, throwing up the odd windmill. They've stopped doing big infrastructure projects, a lot of them, except the Chinese and places like Qatar when they're just using an excuse to spend money. They're not really bothered anymore. So why have they given up on the planet? Because something is happening, something is coming. And then you had Richard Branson go into space yesterday in his airplane. And Why? Why does he want to go to space? What's driven him up? What's he looking at from space? What does he need to experience? When we all know that the theory of relativity, when you go, what further you go from away from the Earth, your body, you go into a different time zone. That's why the U.S. Navy satellites who do the photographs for Google Earth and also do the atomic clock, they're constantly recorrecting themselves, the GPS, for relativity. The further you move away from the Earth, time changes. Are these people like Elon Musk and Branson and the rest of them all obsessed with going back into space to try and correct the time, the space time continuum that they're trapped in? It's like sapphire and steel right now. If you were to ask me now what year this was, I couldn't really tell you. If you said to me it's 1984, 1949, I'm just saying, like for 2020, 2040, I'd have a difficulty time. I don't feel like I'm in this reality right now, and I think a lot of you guys don't feel that as well. That there's something happened. The clock speed of the human brain has shifted. And what are these vaccines, these needle crafts really about? Like the thumbnail for this video, it's for the CDC, and it says if there's a hurricane, number two on the list is get the needle craft ASAP. Why do you need to get the needle craft ASAP if you're running from a hurricane? And I see this is all kinds of weird things. The weather is. I saw a fucking huge eagle kind of thing, or maybe a buzzard, where they shouldn't have been yesterday on the N17. I've seen millions of not millions, but thousands of crows in murmurations very similar to starlings, flying really low, and there's loads of them dead on the road after being hit by traffic. I saw a bizarre video of magpies with their necks all caught in a fence, and they had to be lifted up and out. How did they even get in there? There's all kinds of weird weather anomalies. Apparently the Congo in Africa is like underwater, and there's weird anomalies in weather everywhere. So there's definitely some kind of massive changes happening, and we're changing at a conscious level. The planet is changing. And it's not this global warming shit. There's something else going on. But fundamentally, I can remember reading a book years ago, and I can't remember what the name was, but it was a book of short stories, and it said that what happened was a certain type of flare had come from the sun, which basically collapsed the brains on most people, and turned them into zombies. By zombies, they were able to function, but they weren't like able to think. And the ones who were not affected by this solar flare became very nervous because they were almost like a second-class citizen because they could think for themselves, they could adapt, and they had to be very careful and keep their mouths shut around everyone else because people were suspicious, others would be suspicious of them if they were able to think cognitively or question things. And it was almost like, I forget the name of the story, but it was almost some huge solar flare did this to them. This feels like this nowadays. It really feels like this now. So I don't know what the answer to this is. I don't know what the solution to this is. I don't know what's really going on. All I know is something is going on. Something. And you can laugh at that Mandela effect, yet most of them are rubbish. But that one of Jaws, the girlfriend of Jaws, had braces. You all know it. In fact, Rod Ager from that excellent cognitive learning channel, uh, he was actually going through near self gaslighting to try and convince himself that there was no no braces on Jaws' girlfriend, even though when he said he had clearly remembered there were. We have gone into, and you're saying, oh, it's the lighting or her glasses make you're mistaking your glasses over the years for braces. It's just something you feel there has to be, and no, Rob, it's proof that the reality has split, And it happened probably around 9/11, the psychic of shock of that. And ever since then, we've been drifting slowly into other realities. The good news is, and it doesn't matter, you can go back all you want, find the old VHS copy of when it was on BBC Two back in 1984 and someone recorded on VHS. You can go back, you'll find she'll have no braces in that video, because that video again, when you go into a new when you go into an altered reality, it's not just from the point of the altered reality on that changes. It's the whole backlog has changed. It's right back to the beginning of time. But if you have the memory of the previous one, you remember, like the braces on her teeth. And that was in fact, I'm very happy. The more I study that thing, the more comforting I find it, because it makes me realize that us and the tribe and stuff like that, we can get out of this. We can actually get it. When I say a parallel society, maybe my subconscious mind is telling me a parallel universe, an actual parallel universe where we don't have to deal with these bastards and this asshole shit anymore. How about that one? How about them? Apples. How about them apples? Maybe it's literally not just a parallel society, but a parallel world where we don't have all this crap going on. Think about that one, and that's why you know it's easy to say be positive and stuff like that. But the other day and I was thinking about comparing when I was taught the other day, the other video about comparing this to World War I, the big push. Well, I found that quite comforting too, because then I said to myself, well, all we have to do is wait until the Roaring Twenties, because archetypes always spool around. Someone posted a very good comment on that video, the big push, where he said, you ever notice that the cancel culture people are exactly the same as the women who are handing out the feathers? They're writing from the same demographic too, and the same types, and just 100 years later in a different form. So then that makes me think all I have to do now is wait for the Roaring Twenties to come back. The Great War will be over in its current archetypal form as this Rona, and when that ends, we will have the Roaring Twenties, and the ones who stood in front of the machine guns firing the needlecraft, well, they will be the fallen. They'll be the fallen, but the rest of us, it'll be Charleston, Charleston, did Charleston, did it, did it, did it, did it, did it, did it, did it.